I am loving.
I am fabulous.
I am beautiful.
I am saved.
I am a victor.
I am faithful.
I am devout.
I am accepted.
I am a Christian. I am MCC.
And I am MCC.
I am MCC.
I am MCC.
And I am MCC.
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 So, good afternoon sa inyong lahat. Pasensya na kayo sa boses ko. Kaboses ko si Inday Garutay. Since July last year, ganito na boses ko. It's because of, hindi dahil sa coronavirus, but because of I have acid reflux. So, February na. But thank God, tapos na ang January. Di ba? Parang January 20. So I think most of you will agree that January 2019 is one of the most 2020 is the most stressful January that we ever had. Parang sunod-sunod yung mga bad news, di ba? Yung Taal, nagkaroon ng eruption sa Taal. Bushfire in Australia. Nagkaiwalay si James at saka si Nadine. Ano pa ba? Namatay si Kobe Bryant at ang daughter niya sa helicopter accident. So we are thankful in spite of what happened in January. We are still thankful and we welcome February. And you know that February is the month of love. So we'll be starting February with our series, which is the February sermon series, which is Love Stories You Never Knew. So these are love stories that there is queer love stories in the Bible. So this is a very good, very encouraging for all of us. Since puro bad news ang January, this will be for 4 Sundays. We'll be discussing these love stories para naman ma-affirm tayo, ma-uplift tayo that our love is celebrated and affirmed by God. So this February, so we'll start February 2. We'll be starting with Langit at Lupang Pag-ibig ni Jonathan at David. So next Sunday will be Jacob Gets Intimate with God. And then February 16, Jesus Flirts at the Well. And February 23, Polyamorous, Ruth, Naomi, and Boaz. So I was appointed or entrusted by Pastor Joseph to discuss about the love story of Jonathan and David. So sino na nakarinig sa story ni David and Jonathan? Taas ang kamay. So we know David, diba? And we also know Jonathan. But you never knew that there was a love story between these two guys. So it is written in the Old Testament. Makikita siya sa 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel. So the author of 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel is thought to have been a member of King David's court. So siguro ito yung pinaka-close friend, beshi ni King David, yung sumulat ng 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel. Because he seems to know the intimate details of David's life and pulls no punches when telling the story of David's reign and his predecessor, King Saul. So as part of this story, the author tells about Saul's son, Jonathan, and his unique relationship with David. You may have heard Jonathan and David's story. Siguro bata pa tayo, naririnig na natin sa mga superbook, napanood na natin sa superbook, o kaya sa mga nabasa natin sa children's Bible. But if you're like most people, you have probably never looked at it closely. If your pastor preached about it, the sermon probably talked about the friendship of Jonathan and David. Most Christians point to Jonathan and David as an example of idealized male bonding, a type of brotherly love, not stained by romantic entanglements of male and female relationships. The biblical text, however, it's completely inconsistent with their interpretation. We will present the biblical evidence and let you be the jury. So I will present to you the scriptural evidence and let you be the jury. Parang kayo yung mga judge sa The Voice. So, were Jonathan and David merely good friends or experiencing brotherly love, or was there a deeper romantic relationship level in their relationship? So the author of 1 Samuel tells of a man named Saul. So siya yung first king of Israel who became the king and fathered a son named Jonathan. David, who was a shepherd, so makita nyo si David ay isang shepherd, si Jonathan ay isang from the royal family. So langit at lupa ang kanilang agwat sa buhay. David, who was a shepherd from the smallest tribe of Israel, came to the attention of Saul and Jonathan when he volunteered to fight a giant who was troubling their nation. So all of you knows this story about David and Goliath. So of all the soldiers in the army of King Saul, only this shepherd had the courage to fight, and natalo niya si Goliath. So we know the story. With just a slingshot, he was able to defeat Goliath. So Saul was intrigued by this courageous young man. So he called David to come talk to him, which brings us to Exhibit A. So the text in 1 Samuel 18:1-4 says, when David had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was bound to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. So love at first sight. Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that he was wearing. So, inalis niya ang kanyang damit. And he gave it to David. and his armor, and even his sword, and his bow, and his belt. So imagine this prince took off his robe, gave his most precious possession. For a prince, his weapons are his most precious possession to this young man. Now imagine if this story has been about Jonathan and a woman. Suppose the author had written that Jonathan's soul was bound to Miriam, and Jonathan loved her, and Jonathan loved her as his own soul. And suppose that upon meeting Miriam for the first time, Jonathan immediately gave all his most precious possession, like his weapons, his armor, because these are important symbols of power and status. If 1 Samuel 18, 1-4 were about Jonathan's first encounter with a woman, theologians everywhere would be writing about this as one of the greatest love stories of all time. But the story of Jonathan and his love would be siguro it would be a source of Hollywood films, diba? But because the object of Jonathan's affection is a man, our cultural prejudice kicks in, and we insist, notwithstanding the very strong biblical evidence, that this could not have been more than deep friendship. This culturally correct reading will not withstand scrutiny. It asks us to put an interpretation on the story that is completely at odds with our own experiences of human behavior. So when was the last time that you saw a heterosexual man swept away by brotherly love offer another man his most precious possession in their first encounter? Diba? Tol, bro, love na kita. Ibibigay ko sa iyo lahat. Ito, hinubad ko yung jacket ko. Sa'yo na yung Armalite ko. Sa'yo na yung bulletproof jacket. Suppose the pastor of your church, assuming he's a man, upon meeting another man for the first time, strip himself of his barong or suit and give it to the other. Suppose in that same encounter, he also offered his most precious possession, his family Bible, his wristwatch, his car. Wouldn't this strike you as more than just a little queer? Wouldn't this strike you as more than, let's face it, the author of 1 Samuel is describing a classic love at first sight encounter that happens to involve two men. But there is more to this story than this one meeting. So if you read the following verses, David became a mighty warrior in the army of Saul, and his popularity with the people of Israel threatened Saul's throne. So Saul planned to kill David. So naging karibal sa power and popularity si David nung king. Eventually, Jonathan convinced his father to allow David back. Kasi mahal talaga niya si Jonathan eh. At saka, di ba, they probably slept in just one room. Kasi, bro naman sila eh. Bro. This time, so Jonathan warned David and he fled the palace before Saul could act. Eventually, Jonathan convinced his father to allow David back, but Saul soon planned to kill David. This time, he did not tell Jonathan, but David was able to escape anyway. Then Jonathan and David met in secret. Jonathan begged David to come back to the palace. Sige na bro, bumalik ka na sa palasyo. So they made a plan. Jonathan would go home and try to find out what his father was thinking. If his father has cooled down, he would let David know it was safe. So isang gabi, habang nasa royal table, the subject of David came up and Jonathan spoke on his behalf. And do you know what is Saul's reaction? This is Exhibit B. Saul said to Jonathan, "You son of a perverse, rebellious woman." Sa Tagalog siguro sinabi niya, PI mo. Diba? Parang Duterte. Do I not know that you have been chosen, that you have chosen David, the son of Jesse, to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse lives upon the earth, neither you nor your kingdom shall be established. Parang sinasabi niya, akala mo hindi ko alam yung relasyon yung dalawa, na hindi lang kayo mag-tol, mag-bro, kundi mag-shoota pala kayo. So many gay men have experienced dinner conversation which sounded very similar to this one. Siguro na-experience na natin to sa mga families natin. They made the mistake of talking about their lover at the table, and their father became furious. Na-experience ko yan sa bahay namin. More often than not, the blame goes first to the mother. Diba? Most of the time, yung mga tatay natin, sinisisi yung mga nanay natin. Kasi, pinalaki mo yung mama's boy, kaya malambot. Then the father turns his anger towards the son. Can't you see how you're shaming the whole family? Diba? Yung narinig ko sa tatay ko, nakakahiya ka dahil isa kang bakla. So do you even care what this will do to your career? Paano namin showbiz career mo pag nalamang bading ka? You'll never amount to anything until you give up this foolishness. In this biblical text, the arguments are the same and even more significant. Saul's reference to shaming Jonathan's mother nakedness carries a sexual connotation. And the implication is that Jonathan is bringing sexual shame to his family. Grabe, no? Ang sakit siguro ng pakiramdam ni Jonathan. Nagmamahal lang ako. Jonathan immediately ran from the table. And that night, he went to tell David the sad news. The narrative of their final meeting is full of tragedy and pathos and constitute Exhibit C. So while I'm reading this, I want you to imagine parang pelikula, parang Brokeback Mountain, this scene of David and Jonathan. David rose from beside the stone heap and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. He bowed 3 times, and they kissed each other. They kissed each other and wept with each other. David wept the more. Si David siya yung todong humagulgol. Then Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, since both of us have sworn in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord shall be between me and you." "And between my descendants and your descendants forever." He got up and left, and Jonathan went into the city. So naghiwalay na sila. And that was the last time that David and Jonathan saw each other. David went into hiding, and Jonathan was eventually killed in battle alongside his father. Perhaps they had some idea that this was the end. They certainly knew their love was doomed. And Jonathan reminded David of their covenant with each other. So meron pala silang holy union. He reminded him that even if they could not be together, they have made a pledge, and the bond between them would last through all generations. All their children and grandchildren will be like one family, bound by their love for each other. Later, after taking the throne, David would remember this covenant and adopt Jonathan's only son as his own, something completely unheard of in a time when kings were expected to kill anyone with any connection to the previous royal house. Kasi di ba magiging threat? It will threaten his throne. Parang Game of Thrones, di ba? Pero hindi. Because of their covenant, David adopted Jonathan's only son. So he asked, was this merely deep friendship or a romantic relationship? In Exhibit A, upon their first meeting, Jonathan is said to have loved David as his own soul and to have given him his most precious possession. In Exhibit B, Jonathan's father uses language of sex and shame when he decries Jonathan and David's relationship in a fit of rage. In Exhibit C, we see Jonathan and David's passionate, tearful goodbye. And Jonathan reminding David of the eternal covenant they have made to each other. A covenant David still honors years later, even though honoring it is politically incorrect. But if you are still not convinced this was a romantic relationship, there is one more piece of biblical evidence. The smoking gun to speak. The story has one more passionate chapter. In the first chapter of 2 Samuel, the author tells us that after Saul and Jonathan were killed in battle, David tore his clothes and fasted, a sign of deep mourning. He wept and wrote a song, which he ordered all the people of Judah to sing. In that song, he included these words. 2 Samuel 1, 23, 26 to 27. So this is the love song of David to Jonathan. Saul and Jonathan, beloved and lovely. In life and in death, they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles. They were stronger than lions. How the mighty have fallen in the midst of battle. Jonathan lies slain upon your high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. Greatly loved, greatly beloved were you to me. Your love to me was wonderful, passing the love of women. Again, let me repeat. Your love to me was wonderful, passing the love of women. Here it is in black and white. David states the love he shared with Jonathan was greater than what they have experienced with women. Have you ever heard a heterosexual man say he loved his male friend more than his wife? Diba? Bro, mas mahal kita kaysa asawa ko. This goes well beyond the friendship between two heterosexual men. In this story, we have the direct biblical answer to our question. Can two people of the same sex live in a loving, committed relationship with God's favor? The answer is yes. Because Jonathan and David did. And the Bible celebrates their relationship. So the author feels parang hindi niya kailangan mag-explain sa mga magbabasa ng scriptures na yon. This may look like a love story, but no hanky-panky happened. Walang ganong footnote sa story. So the author also will have been aware of this story's similarity to the ancient Near Eastern stories that contains homoerotic aspects. So maraming stories in the Middle Eastern civilization about two warriors falling in love. So under inspiration of the Holy Spirit, the author of 1st and 2nd Samuel wrote this beautiful love story, and so no conflict between it and the earlier scriptures in Leviticus. Diba? Ano sinasabi sa Leviticus? No man shall lie with another man. But the author shows no conflict with this love story with the scriptures in Leviticus. Apparently, the author understood the Leviticus passage the same way we do, seeing it as a condemnation of Canaanite temple sex between two men, temple sex, which therefore have no application to a deep romantic relationship between two men who loved and served God, the God of Israel. If someone has challenged the author, he might well have responded, "This is not what Leviticus was meant to condemn." You've got to understand the context in which Leviticus was written. This is a very different situation. So mga kapatid, why can't we use the same common sense today? Why are some Christians so determined to condemn what God has so clearly approved in the scriptures? Remember, David is not some minor person in the Bible. He is called a man after God's own heart. He is one of Israel's best-loved king. He is one of the most prolific writers of scriptures, writing many of the Psalms. And lastly, David is in the lineage of Jesus Christ, and he loved Jonathan. Amen.